Okay, over to you and the presidents. Can I show you these pictures from Portugal Weekly, Ben, as a little bit of
go ahead.
Right, okay, because
Let's
our man George Branco has been up to his excellent work over on Substack, and I don't know if this helps in the background, but it's been narrowed down already, has it, to a few favourites? Is that right?
It has been narrowed. What I've done is there's currently 11 candidates, and we
Right.
could do it. We could kind of do a deep dive into every party, every little liberal incentive, and all that. But we'd be here for hours on end. So what I've done tonight is I've narrowed it down to the 3 more popular choices at the moment.
Yeah.
Which are your AD, Aliança Democrática, which is kind of your centre-right parties, PS, which is your Partido Socialista, more centre-left, and the more controversial of the lot, Chega, as well. Those are kind of our top 3 contenders for these first round of elections. Why? Now, there's a reason why I'm saying first round of elections as well, because unless a party can secure an absolute majority, it will proceed to a second round where the top 2 candidates are chosen and the re-election will be applied with just those top 2 candidates. And
re-election, as in what? So there's going to be a first election on Sunday, but there might be another.
So there'll be, sorry, I don't know if I phrased that correct. There'll be a first election.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I'll be surprised if any of these parties can surpass 25%.
Okay.
Get 25% of the population behind them. But if no party secures an absolute majority, that being more than 50% of the population, what will happen is they'll take the top 2 results, and then there'll be another election with just those 2.
My goodness, right? Okay, a lot of work for electoral bureaucrats at the moment. And they've had a busy year already, haven't they? They've done every other kind of election with this to top it. And so, who are the top 3 in your view then at the moment as we stand?
So, starting from, let's go from left to right. We'll start with António José Seguro, who is representing PS here.
That's him, isn't it?
Yeah, that would be... Sorry, I keep having to zoom out and zoom in on what you're showing. I've only got one screen, unfortunately, something I'm looking to fix in the future. Ideally get one screen here, one screen here. But yes, that would be Mr. Seguro. No, sorry, that's not Seguro, is it? That's...
I beg your pardon. No, it is. That is Seguro. And Mensch is this chap here.
Mensch is below, okay.
Yeah, that's right. So that's the fella you're talking about there. It's just the way it's written here. The picture is underneath the text. So Seguro is here. Socialist Party member since his youth. So that's him. Looks like a nice enough fella. What's your view?
Well, I'm not going to try put my view out there, but this is your traditional centre-left party.
I tried.
You tried to snare me there, but... I haven't had that many drinks yet. So it's your typical centre-left party. When it comes to property, and we are a real estate show, property show. After all, we do have to talk about property. They kind of have... I remember them advocating a lot for renters' rights here in Portugal.
Yeah.
And they're kind of more focused on that sector of the market.
Yeah.
Rather than purchase itself. A good way... the way I'm judging them on how their approach to the property market is if you remember a few months ago, the government passed a housing package. So that was, the big talks about reducing EVA as well, reducing how landlords are taxed, renters' rights going up, and that whole packet. I'm going to be the way I'm judging them is how did these candidates respond to that? Because that's something that happened recently, and I think that's probably the best way we have of judging their response, their outlook on the property market at the moment.
And their popularity as well, of course. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it's also a good way of understanding, of course, each one of these candidates represents a party. So what is the PS's approach to the current situation, the situation at hand as well? And it seems to me at least, that it's a lot more renters' rights focused, not so much being done in terms of landlords, in terms of licensing. There's very little comments as well. That is the general idea I'm getting from them. Moving on as well. So
left-leaning then, socialistic policies, perhaps not too much if you're an entrepreneur looking for some centrist or more sort of right-leaning entrepreneurial stuff, perhaps with this chap Seguro.
Yeah, I'd say this is a bit more, we're talking more about renters' rights, in essence, is what I'm trying to get across here as well, which is also something that needs to be talked about here in Portugal. Still, moving on. We have Luís Marques Mendes, who is AD, so Aliança Democrática. They are kind of a coalition between 2 centre-right parties here in Portugal. Now, this guy is a bit more. I remember a few comments on sort of PPP, so public-private projects, as well. He wants more cohesion between shareholders in property and the public sector as well, which is ultimately a good thing. I remember easing on licensing too was a big thing for this party as well.
Okay.
Those are. Sorry, do you want to say something?
I just noted here, he left politics after losing, thanks to George Branco for this, subscribe to his Substack, Portugal Weekly, on Substack, of course. He left politics after losing the PSD leadership in 2007. So he is a bit of an old sort of veteran of Portuguese politics and worked for a law firm, as they all seem to do. They all have a law background, don't they, in politics in Portugal, or largely anyway. And as a political commentator, that's how you build a public profile in Portugal, being a pundit and being seen on the TV so people can get used to your face. And we're definitely used to this guy's face just recently. Marcos Mendes said he wanted to be a president with experience, independence, and the capacity to form consensus. So a bit more coming to the centre then than our previous chap, Seguro, it would appear.
Yeah, a bit more. I guess that's down to interpretation, really. It's down to what your perspective is of where do we think centrist policy lies. But I'd say it's a bit more, we've thrown the word about entrepreneurial. Perhaps this would be a more entrepreneurial approach to the current housing crisis here in Portugal, kind of incentivizing the private sector a bit more and, just incentivizing the private sector and funding PPPs as well.
Well, the government aren't cracking on, are they, with building public housing alone? So you do need something a little bit more imaginative than perhaps what's going on at the moment to make that happen, and so people can get some affordable housing here in Portugal. Okay, any more you want to say about him, or should we move on to the third pick?
Just to add on what you said there, I personally, maybe I've been a bit ignorant of this sector of the market, but personally I haven't heard of a lot of purely public-funded projects that are coming up for housing here in Portugal. I've heard of quite a few public-private partnerships that are popping up, but not something that is 100%. This is funded purely by the state. This is funded, it's our control, it's our sort of social housing.
Yeah. Me neither. And I guess you'd have to be reading the Portuguese press fairly closely to find something of that kind, wouldn't you? And we look forward to hearing from John. Yeah, John Wood of Valwood. Looking forward to catching up with him and seeing how he's getting on with his affordable housing project. Have you heard anything from him?
We've been speaking behind the scenes, and I'm sure you reminded me as well. I have to send him a message after this show. That is something we have to do and get John back on here too, because his project is really. I love what he's doing. It's an awesome project, and I really believe in it a lot.
Agreed.
Still.
Quick comment from Gary. Taking a notice of how popular or successful Portuguese politicians are, Mr. Costa ended up with a nice little number in the EU, a bit like Mr. Blair. Yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to say we should feel sorry for the losers here. I think you're right, Gary. They're going to be okay, whether they win the presidency or not. And yeah, however unpopular they may be in office, they do tend to land jobs elsewhere, don't they? Some nice plum jobs as well. Certainly, Antonio Costa has got a good profile. As I think is he president of the EU currently, and he's up there with all the photos, all the glad handing and press junkets and so on of the top brass of the EU. He's up there, and so yeah, we certainly shouldn't feel sorry for him. And in fact, I think it's increased the resentment and bitterness towards him to see him in such a plum job for many Portuguese people. Right, who's our third then, Ben?
Right, our third one, and probably our more controversial one on the list, is André Ventura, leader of Chega.
Okay,
I'd say definitely probably the most controversial party in Portuguese politics at the moment.
Yeah.
I'd say, and one that's gained significant, as it seems to be the rhetoric across Europe and across the world at the moment. There seems to be a growing far-right population of voters. What is Ventura's approach to politics? I remember him being quite positive about the package that was introduced recently. I say recently, we're talking about the package being passed around early December, so over a month ago now.
Yes, yeah. And on immigration as well. I mean, they were quite influential, weren't they, in their ideas that were, I guess, in a sort of Trumpian way, quite bold policies that they figured might get pulled back a little bit and refined by, or shaped once negotiated with the other parties. But yeah, not afraid to be controversial at all, is he?
No, exactly. His approach is also one of the main things, if I can say that, to his approach would be more residency control as well, allowing more control over who can come into Portugal, who can buy houses, what the prerequisites are, and kind of getting a tighter hold on the on demand.
Yeah. Interestingly, here George Branco is reporting, and synonymously, Chega and far right. It always seems to be reported that way. In 2019, became the first MP following a career as a football pundit and a run for the Loures City Council under the PSD banner. So formerly PSD, interestingly, he has continuously claimed he did not want to run for president, but made the move when he didn't see any candidates who measured up to his expectation. Ventura has made immigration, health and corruption the cornerstones of his campaign and wants to bury the two-party dominance. Now, populist policy. Who around the world doesn't want to see the two proverbial cheeks of the same backside dominating politics? But I suspect they didn't necessarily want to see a third cheek. I don't know if that's the right metaphor, quite in this shape, to mix my posterior metaphors up a bit too much there. In a debate with Gouvier Mello, he's another candidate, of course, in December, Ventura said, as president, he could mobilize the country to change the constitution. That's pretty bold, isn't it? One example was to allow chemical castration of paedophiles, claiming that he wasn't captive to a document there referring to the Constitution of Portugal. So are those, you think it's down to these three, do you? And this other chap is not in the running anymore. Is that what your analysis of the situation?
If we go by the latest polls, that chap has fallen a bit behind everyone else.
Right?
We're talking about everyone we've mentioned, so I'm going to try not to get into that, because I think once I step into the territory of why is that, I'm going to start putting my own personal opinions out there, and that's something I will try and avoid.
All right, but
still, the top three that I mentioned here are kind of in the 19-20% currently.
All right. Okay. So maybe coming down to those three. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. Of course, this is all speculative, and we are still a week out. Polls can change dramatically very quickly, but I reckon.
Do they, Ben? In your experience, do they change quite dramatically in Portuguese politics?
Well, depend. Also, my definition of dramatic is a change by 2%. So. Not exactly like we're not talking about they've suddenly got 30% of the population on their side.
Yes,
no, but in that sense of something could change by 1-2% in the coming weeks in the current polls. Yeah, and if we go by the polls, which admittedly not the best way to follow this situation, but I'm also not qualified enough to comment on.
No, fair enough. No, appreciate what you're putting forward there. On the matter of a potential Chega president, do you think that would be good for business? Because I think I've seen a lack. One assumes that right-leaning, far-right, all the titles, the labels that go with Chega would suggest that it'll be a bit more about the free market and commerce and entrepreneurialism and more supportive. But I'm not aware of many policies. They seem to be bogged down in other areas of society rather than supporting small or medium-sized businesses, SMEs. Again, would you rather not speak to that?
I think you already know my answer to this question, Carl.
Right.
That is, I'm not going to give you a complete answer on that, unfortunately.
Right, okay.
Maybe if we meet in person off camera, I'm more than happy to talk about this, but...
I'm interested to know. I don't know what. If anyone does know, pop it in the chat. There are people I know who've studied the Chega manifesto, and it may well have something in there about business. But they are bogged down in other matters. It would appear, and being quite negative rather than proactive would be. I don't mind sticking my neck out and saying that. All very negative, whether you agree with it or not. It's all very sort of on a very negative footing, it would appear. Sorry, Ben,
yeah, the manifesto is a bit pessimistic in that regard of like Portugal's in a bit of a situation, and what can here's our solution to fix it, which is mainly immigration centered,
blaming people,
blaming exactly. Couldn't have said it better.
Okay. What are the current property hotspots in Portugal at the moment? I think Gary's glazing over with the politics. So let's go back to real estate and property. And I've got a nice one for you in Fundão, in the Castelo Branco district. But is this something you can answer?
Yeah, definitely. And if I'm permitted to answer it with a question, what are you looking for as a hotspot? Are you looking for somewhere with sort of exponential growth? Are you looking for guaranteed returns on a property? Because if you're looking for, if you're looking for guaranteed returns, your Algarve, your Lisbon, your Porto, those won't let you down if you can afford to step into those markets as well. Central Portugal, admittedly, yes, a bit more volatile, but it's still very much a developing area at the moment. And there's plenty of opportunities out here by us, which also, on average, are a lot cheaper too.
Very good. Thank you for that. Almeida Allen, I've got an answer to that question. Chega's position on the economic policy and the free market. Chega presents itself as a party that is national, conservative, and liberal. In the classical sense, it's so confusing, the word liberal these days, isn't it? In terms of the economy, the party argues for less state control and bureaucracy. Chega wants the state to be reduced to its essential functions because it sees excessive regulation and government presence as harming economic freedom and economic dynamism. Chega also reduction of taxation. The party says the current tax burden is brute. Now, I think there's probably another part of this to come, but I'm going to finish that by probably suggesting brutal. What other words could that be the start of? Brutal, I would agree with. Who wouldn't know, to be fair? But Almeida, thank you for joining us. And if there is another part of that comment, please send it to us so that we can see how that ends there. Thank you very much indeed. Anything else you want to say about hotspots, Ben, before we move on to my featured property?
About hotspots, one that surprised me for this year, and I was there just recently, is Viseu at the moment. Viseu is one of the few markets in Portugal, now me saying this controversially, Viseu being one of the few markets in Portugal that last year actually saw a depreciation by about 12% from Q1 to Q4. But having looked at it recently and the amount of buildings that are being built there, again, very strong indicator of growth. The area's got a hospital in there too. There's a decent job market there for younger people as well. And like we mentioned, there's about 70,000 new applicants, new younger people buying homes in Portugal or applying for those IMT exemptions as well. So a growing market. I think Viseu is going to be on the up and up this year.
Yeah, I agree. And in terms of hotspots, it's like one to watch, isn't it? If you're looking for somewhere interesting, unknown, and where you might get a bargain, if that's your definition of hotspot, Viseu is the place, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It was never going to be long until we got round to this. Okay, but let's move on. If you're looking to get away from politics, sorry, Ben, I haven't stopped you there. Have I saying any more about hotspots or any further analysis?
No, really. So Central Portugal, Viseu, again, a bit more volatile, a bit more of a gamble, but there are, if you know the market and if you're confident in where you're putting your money or your skills in fixing up houses, whatever, then great place to put it. If you want the classic guaranteed return, not guaranteed, but next to guaranteed returns, because whenever you buy a house, it's always a gamble. Your Lisbon, your Porto, your Algarve, those are your classics. They'll never fail you.